Peace, mercy, and blessings of God be upon you. In the name of God, the most gracious, the most merciful, praise be to God, and peace and blessings be upon the messenger of God. O God, there is nothing easy except what you make easy, and you make sorrow easy if you will. O God, teach us what benefits us, and benefit us with what you have taught us, and increase us in knowledge. O God, make all our deeds purely for your noble countenance, and do not let anyone else have any part in them. O Lord of the worlds, welcome, dear brothers. In the previous episode, this is the fourth session. In the third episode, we talked about the ignorance that the world was in at the moment of the birth of the Prophet. Peace and blessings be upon him. A purpose of talking about the ignorance is to understand the words of God Almighty, and we have not sent you, O Muhammad, except as a mercy to the worlds, because we cannot understand how our Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, was mercy to the worlds unless we know the corruption that existed at that time. We talked about the conditions in Persia, Rome, India, and other regions, and we came to talk about idolatry among the Arabs, but time ran out. So we will continue what the Arabs were doing. We mentioned that the Arabs before the birth of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, in the pre-Islamic era, had intense idolatry. Each tribe had its own idol. Every house had an idol, and the Kaaba had 360 idols around it. This means there were 360 idols around the Kaaba. In modern terms, Meccan society was religiously diverse and liberal. It had no problem with people adhering to any religion they wished. They could worship this idol or that idol, be Jewish, be Christian, or have no religion at all. The Arabs in the pre-Islamic era accepted all of this. This is something we need to understand when answering the question, why did the Arabs stand as one, or rather, stand so firmly against the Prophet, peace be upon him? If they accepted 360 idols, why didn't they accept Islam? Why 361? Why Islam specifically? We will come to that later, but this intense idolatry and multiplicity of religions existed among the Arabs. We also mentioned that the Arabs had many injustices. They raided each other, plundered wealth, oppressed the weak, and mistreated their neighbors. We even stopped at the hadith of Ja'far, may God be pleased with him. Ja'far ibn Abi Talib, may God be pleased with him, describing what happened among them. To the Negus, he said, O king, we were people of ignorance, worshipping idols, eating carrion, severing family ties, mistreating our neighbors, and the strong among us devouring the weak. This is the state of societies not guided by religion. For my friends, morality
لابد أن يكون أصلها دين وإلا فما معنى الأخلاق؟ يعني لماذا تلتزم الصدق إذا كانت مصلحتك المادية في الكذب؟ لماذا تتعفف عن القتل إذا كان القتل هو من يحقق لك المكسب أو من يزيد من نفوذك أو من يزيد من سطوتك وقوتك وجبروتك؟
must have its foundation in religion. Morality must have its foundation in religion. Otherwise, what is the meaning of morality? Why adhere to truthfulness if your material interest lies in lying? Why refrain from killing if killing brings you profit, increases your influence, or enhances your power, strength, and tyranny? Morality must have a religious basis because there is no meaning to morality without religion. Even contemporary atheists find one of the most significant mysteries they cannot answer is the issue of morality. The humans evolved from animals, and animals evolved from lower animals, and lower animals evolved from a single cell, and the entire universe evolved from a single atom or a single cell. If human bottle or jar was made of a material that humans found beneficial to cut, shape, and mold as they wished to achieve their goals without any moral qualms. So what's wrong with killing if it's in their best interest, if everything originates from the same material and there are no sacred divine teachings that bestow sanctity upon anything, then everything is the same. For example, why do we refrain from torturing animals? Some sadistic people with psychological deviance find pleasure in torturing animals, sometimes even burning them. Perhaps some of you, if you visit YouTube, will find examples of this. The point is, morality has no meaning if it lacks a religious foundation. In any ignorant society that doesn't adhere to religion, the strong will inevitably prey on the weak. As long as there is no religion, there is no sacredness. Therefore, the most oppressed groups throughout history have generally been women, slaves, and children, because, for example, in Arab societies, female infanticide was practiced. Girls, and sometimes boys, were killed. A boy was attached to girls because there were two reasons for this. Firstly, that a girl might bring him shame, and secondly, that he might become poor because of her. Do not kill your children for fear of poverty, and in another verse, do not kill your children for fear of poverty. Sometimes they would kill their children, both male and female, but the number of females was higher. Generally, the weak in any pre-Islamic society were to be exploited. This applies to Arab societies as well as others. Among the social ills that existed among the Arabs were also the social issues. We mentioned last time that a man would inherit his father's wives. He would either keep them and prevent them from marrying, or he would marry them off to whomever he wanted and collect their dowry, or he would marry them after his father's death. God Almighty said, "And do not marry those whom your fathers married before." Another social ill that existed among the Arabs was the variety of marriages. Glory be to God! This was one of the abominations of pre-Islamic times, even though the Arabs were known for their chivalry and jealousy, but the vices related to lust also spread among them. Aisha, may God be pleased with her, mentioned the four types of marriage among the Arabs. She stated that they had four types, one of which was a legitimate marriage, brought by Islam and approved by Islam, and another was the marriage of seeking offspring. This was one of the worst types. The marriage of seeking offspring was when a man would look at another man he considered strong or handsome and wanted to have a son for himself. He would tell his wife, "Go to so-and-so and seek offspring from him," meaning sleep with him. Then he would not approach her until her pregnancy was confirmed, so that his lineage would be considered good. This was one of the abominations of the pre-Islamic era. Some women would have 10 men enter upon them. This was another type. If she gave birth to a child, she would attribute it to whomever she wished, and he could not refuse. Sometimes, a woman would have relations with more than one man, and if she gave birth to a child, they would bring the genealogists who could discern features and attribute the child to whomever was likely to be the father, so he could not refuse either. Of course, there was also drinking alcohol, which was widespread. In fact, the Arabs had very long and extensive poems about alcohol. He recites for you the Malarkar of Imru al-Qais, meaning Imru al-Qais, the famous wine poet. This was, of course, in the pre-Islamic era, before the second wine poet, Abu Nuwas, came along. The point here is that despite the Arabs being known for their honor and chivalry, vices related to desires were widespread among them because, ultimately,
الشهوات. فكانت توجد عندهم الرايات الحمر صاحبات
Red
الرايات
flags were
التي هي
like
بمثابة الآن بيوت الدعارة
brothels or
والملاهي
nightclubs
الليلية.
today.
كل
All
هذا
of
كان
this
موجودا في
existed
العرب.
among the Arabs. The
والعرب
Arabs
كان
also
عندهم الربا
practiced
كاحد،
usury.
كانوا
They dealt
يتعاملون
with each other
بالربا
using it.
فيما بينهم. والربا
Usury is
هذا
something
هو
that makes the
الأمر
rich
الذي يزداد
richer
به
and the
الغني
poor
غنى
poorer.
ويزداد به الفقير فقرا.
This,
فالربا
too,
أيضا
was
كان
one
من
of the
الأشياء
vices
التي
present
تميز
among
بها
the
العرب.
Arabs.
فلذلك
Therefore, if we
لو
combine these pagan
تجمعنا أحد
practices,
وثنيات
these
هذه
conditions among the Arabs'
العرب
paganism and
ومن
social
النساء
decay, as well as what we
وكذلك ما كنا
mentioned
ذكرناه
last
مرة
time
ماضية
about the
من
paganism and
الوثنيات الموجودة
corruption
عند
present among other
الموجود عند غيره من الأمم،
nations, we
فإن
understand the
الرسول
saying
صلى
of the
الله عليه
prophet, peace
وسلم
and blessings be upon
إن
him,
الله
that
نظر
God
لأهل
looked
الأرض
upon the
فأحبهم
people of
جميعا
the earth and
عربهم
despised them
وعجمهم
all,
إلا
Arabs and
الرايات
non-Arabs alike,
الجليلة.
except for a remnant of the people of the
ومع
book
ذلك
were completely absent. Yet the
بعث
prophet was
النبي إلى
sent to the
العرب،
Arabs, and
وهذا هو
this is the
السؤال المهم
crucial
الآن،
question
وهو
now, the
السؤال الذي
question that
يهتم
concerns
له
those seeking
الراغبون في
reform.
الإصلاح.
We
فنحن
must
يجب أن
reflect and ponder why the
نتلخص لماذا بعث النبي
prophet,
صلى الله عليه
peace and
وسلم إلى
blessings
العرب
be upon
تحديدا،
him, was sent
رغم أن
specifically
كل
to the
هذه
Arabs,
الأمم
even
كانت
though all these nations
تصدر
were
في
steeped in
الضلال
misguidance
والجهالة.
and ignorance.
وكانت
Incidentally,
المجتمعات الجاهلية
pre-Islamic societies
تكن
did
تسمي
not call
نفسها مجتمعات
themselves
جاهلية،
ignorant societies.
هم
They
كانوا يرون
considered
أنفسهم
themselves
مجتمعات
civilized, advanced,
حاضرة
and
ومتقدمة
enlightened.
متنورة.
The term ignorance is used
الجاهلية
in
هذا هو
light of
الفرق
what
الرئيسي ما
Muslims
عرفه المسلمون بعد
later
دخولهم
came
الإسلام
to know
والإسلام
about the virtues of
فسموا ما
Islam,
كان
so
فيه
they called
المسلمون
what existed in the
الجاهلية.
pre-Islamic
هذا
era
جاهلية.
ignorance, when they were
طيب،
ignorant. Now
هنا
here we will
بعض
find
خصائص
some
مميزة
characteristics
بها
that
العرب
distinguished the Arabs
عن
from the
بقية
rest of
هذه
these
الأمم.
nations. A
الخصيصة
first
الأولى،
characteristic is that
ابن
Ibn
خلدون
Khaldun has a very
لطيف
subtle
جدا
distinction in
يقول
God's
إن تعالى
words, and we
وجعلناكم
made you
شعوبا
into
وقبائل
nations and
تعارفوا.
tribes so that you may know one
ابن
another.
خلدون
Ibn
يرى
Khaldun
الشعوب
sees the nations
هي
as those who were
الشعوب
ruled
التي
by kings,
استحوذ
thus
عليها البشر
becoming nations,
فصارت شعوبا. شعوبا
meaning
يعني
governed by a
محكومة
strong
بنظام
and oppressive
سياسي
political
وقومي
system, and the
وقادر. فصارت شعوبا.
tribes
وقبائل.
as those who did not
قبائل الذين
submit
لم
to
يخضعوا
the
للملوك
kings, for they
كانت
still
هذه
possessed a
هي
sense of pride and self-respect.
عزة نفوسهم. لم
They
يخضعوا
submit to
للملك.
the King of
العزة
glory.
هذه
This is the
أهم ما
most
كانت
important
لدى
thing that
العرب
existed among the
في
Arabs in the
الجاهلية.
pre-Islamic era.
ذكرنا في
We
المرة
mentioned
الماضية
last
أن
time that
كيف
it is
عرف
true that the
العرب
Arabs knew
بلاد
some kings
الغساسنة
such as the Ghassanids in the
وكانوا
Levant
يعرفوا
and the
أحيانا أن
Lakhmids in Iraq, and
ممالك
sometimes
وسط
kingdoms
الصحراء
arose
تعتبر
in the
من
middle of the Arabian Peninsula. Of
بمسألة
course,
الحكم،
Yemen has
لكن في
a
النهاية
history in the matter of
كان
governance, but
الفارق
in the
هائلا
end, the
جدا بين
difference
الملوك
was very huge
العرب
between the
وبين
Arab
الملوك
kings and the
الذين
kings who arose
حصلت
in
ثورتهم
other
في العرب.
empires. We
عشان كده
mentioned
ذكرنا في
something
المرة
of this
الماضية
last time, so we
باختصار
will not prolong it for you by
أن العرب
repeating it,
حتى
that the
في
Arabs, even
المناطق
in
التي
the
كان فيها
regions
ملوك
where there were kings,
لم يكن
the
العرب
Arabs were not
مستذلين
subservient to these
لهؤلاء
kings at all. We mentioned to you
ذكرنا لكم أكثر
more
من
than
مرة
once
أنهم
that
كانوا
they were proud
يتفاخرون
of their
أنهم كانوا يتفاخرون
pride and
بخضوعهم
glory and their
للملوك
rejection of the rule
ورفض
of
حكم الملوك.
kings. The second point is that the
إنهم
Arabs, it is
صحيح
true,
كانت
had the
بهم فوارق
class differences
الطبقية
that
في
we
الاقتصاد،
mentioned, but
لكنها
they were
كانت
less
عندهم
severe among
أدنى
them
من
than
هذه
among
الفوارق.
others. I
يعني
mean, we
ذكرنا
mentioned the terrible
الفوارق
differences that
الرهيبة التي
existed
كانت بين
between the
الملوك
blue-blooded
والدواب
kings
والأمراء
and the courtiers
وبين
and the
الحاشية وبين العبيد،
slaves, and
وذكرنا
we mentioned
الفوارق
the class
الأخرى أيضا.
system in
صحيح
India. It
العرب كان
is
عندهم
true that the
عبيد
Arabs had
وكان
slaves, and
عندهم
they had
ملوك وكان
servants,
عندهم
and they
ملوك
had
وكان عندهم
clients.
موالي،
But
ولكن
the differences
الفوارق
that the
التي
Arabs
وضعها
established or
العرب
that
والتي
prevailed
سجلها
in
لديهم
Arab social
العربية
life did not have
لم يكن
this
فيها
savagery, this
توحش
tyranny, this
ولا هذا
oppression,
الاستبداد ولا
or
هذا
this
القصف ولا هذا
humiliation of
الاستذلال
slaves.
للعبيد. تمام.
Rather, one of their virtues
مما
is that
يذكر
the
في
Arabs
محاسنهم إن العرب كانوا
used to
يسمون
give
العبيد
slaves
بأسماء
beautiful and
حسنة.
good names,
تمام.
because these are
لأن
slaves they
هؤلاء
use to
كانوا
adorn themselves.
يتجملون بهم،
And their
وسئل بعض
master was
العرب
asked
لماذا
why they
تسمون
name their
أولادكم
children with frightening
بالأسماء المخيفة. مرعبة، حرب، حنظلة، صخر.
Strong names like Asamar, meaning lion,
أسامة يعني أسد.
Kasora, and
أسد.
Abers, they all have names, but the slaves are given good names. This is one of the names of Bilal, one of the slaves' names, of course, and the names of the female slaves are also more delicate. He said, we name our sons for our enemy and we name our slaves, because the intention behind this harshness is to instill fear in the hearts of the enemy. But these slaves are for us. In any case, it is true that the Arabs had class differences, but not to the same extent as other peoples. They were the closest to the original, natural instincts. One of the characteristics that distinguished the Arabs was that their minds were not consumed by philosophies. You don't find, for example, Byzantine debates among them. Now, to understand this, I mean, go into a library and pick up a philosophy book, or visit a research center's website, or sit in front of a cultural channel, and you will find simple words spoken in simple language, laborious and complex, and the Arabs did not have this. They were not like the Byzantines, nor were they like the Persians, nor were they like the Indians. The Indians' beliefs are very complex. They were not like the Chinese. What kind of people were the Arabs? Simple-minded people in the positive sense, meaning good and bad, possessed the integrity of the noble Arab who does not lie. These people were more suited to the revelation of the message than those who love complexity. I remember Colonel Ronald Victor Botley, a British Orientalist, who wrote a book called The Prophet, The Life of Muhammad. This man lived among the Arabs for a period and wrote this book influenced by them. He wrote several beautiful books, but he also said that if Islam had been revealed to Europeans, it would not have spread among them because Islam is a clear and simple religion, while we Europeans are complex. Islam suits simple people, and the Arabs are truly uncomplicated. One of the advantages of the Arabs was their intellectual and mental integrity. They didn't philosophize about clear matters, obscure them, or delve into excessive details and intricacies. Consequently, they were more deserving of the revelation. Likewise, the Arab constitution and bodies, which grew up in the desert or in simple cities, were more robust and better able to withstand hardship. Of course, Islam, we will give you a saying. Islam is heavy and it came to people to carry it and spread it to the horizons. Islam is not suitable for a people who are affluent, not suitable for a people who have grown accustomed to luxury and extravagance. Rather, this is the way of all the messages. Likewise, we did not send before you any warner to a town except that its affluent said, its affluent ones said. The affluent people, in general, are the enemies of the prophets. This is a general rule, and this is a rule that is followed in the Holy Quran. The affluent people are the enemies of the prophets. The supporters of the prophets, the supporters of the messages, are those who have not been touched by the wind. And even some sociologists express this meaning in words, saying that revolutions are only carried out by the middle class. Why? Because the affluent upper class does not want to change the situation it is in, and this working class does not have the ability to think. This is a man in his daily grind to achieve his daily sustenance and the necessities of his life. So he does not think at all about improving his situation, but rather sees any change in reality as a threat to him. In general, the affluent are unlikely to be followers of the Prophet. often the ones who stand in front of the prophets. Arabs were in a physical condition and the environment in which they grew up that qualified them physically to carry this message. This is one of the secrets of the descent of the Arabs, the descent of the message, the descent of Islam upon whom last matter for the Arabs, and the most apparent matter, is that the morals of the Arabs were the closest to the morals of nature. We mentioned last time that we can divide the morals of the Arabs into three categories. Evil morals, bad morals like those that were widespread in the pre-Islamic era and in other pre-Islamic eras, but to a lesser extent than in other pre-Islamic eras, such as eating carrion, oppressing women, burying girls alive, dealing with usury, and morals that are exaggerations and excesses in morals whose origin is good. As we mentioned, the issue of killing and victory. This is a branch of a moral whose origin is good, which is what? The creation of generosity and chivalry is evident when we speak of it. Even the extravagance that existed among the Arabs was a branch of generosity, and the Arabs were known for their generosity through Hatim al-Tai. Hatim al-Tai's stories are very, very famous. But when you read, for example, some of his poetry, you feel this sublimity that was inherent in the soul of Hatim al-Tai. Among the stories told about this is his wife's words to him. If we lose a flock of sheep after a raid, you will be like a black plague upon it, like your mother's son, meaning, whatever remains of our sheep, it is as if you are a black, stormy wind that wipes out the wealth we have accumulated. He replies, "Leave me and my wealth, for your wealth is abundant, and every man acts according to his habits. Don't you know that if a guest comes to me and hospitality is scarce, I feed him only the best of the camel's hump," meaning, don't you know that if a guest comes to me during a time of scarcity, I feed him only from the fattest camel's hump, which is the best food a camel can have. Then he says, and this leads us to another meaning, I will save from my wealth a camel's hump and a camel's hump. The only things I will not part with are the shield and the sword. I will save from my wealth the shield, the swift horse, the black spear, and the sharp, polished spear and sword. That will suffice me from all my wealth. But he says, this is the verse that I will use. Let my wealth be a shield for my honor, a protection for my honor, a shield for my honor. Look, he spends his wealth to protect, to preserve his reputation and dignity. So, wealth becomes for his honor like a shield, like protection, like a shield. They say to me, you have squandered your wealth, so be frugal. And I would not have been a leader were it not for what they say. And I would not have been a leader were it not for what they say. Meaning, were it not for squandering this wealth, I would not have been a leader. So, the price of leadership is this giving, this generosity, and this meaning. Al-Mutanabi later expressed this meaning by saying, were it not for hardship, all people would be leaders. Generosity impoverishes, and courage leads to ruin. If all people were leaders without hardship, all people would be leaders. But none among them will be leaders except he who endures poverty because of his abundant generosity and exposes himself to battle because of his extreme courage. So, the morals of the Arabs, their origin, meaning their origin, were good, then they increased to excess in it due to the excess of it, and, as their other poet says, I am from a people who
تفانوا
and were killed because whenever someone called out, "Where is there to protect us? Where is there to rescue us?" they would rush to him. I am from a people whose forefathers were destroyed, except for the defenders. If there was one among 1,000, if there was one among 1,000 of them, they would call upon their uncle, the night they would call upon him. If he were just one, and there were 1,000 around him, then he would call upon the night, thinking that they were calling upon him, that they meant him. I am from a people whose forefathers were destroyed, except for the defenders. If there was one among 1,000 of us, they would call upon their uncle, the night they would call upon him. And then he says in this, if the knights were to turn away, lest the sharp edges of the swords strike them, we would reach them with our own hands. If people are afraid of the sword, we are the ones who will reach the sword to ourselves, and you will not see us, even if our calamity is great. With the mourners for the dead, they mourn the truth of Arab society and what is in it. The more you delve into their morals, the more you realize that these people were the closest and most suitable for the revelation of the message. That is why the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, said, I was sent only to perfect good character. And that is why, if an Arab was presented with the Prophet's message without any external influences, he would say, by God, my Arab brother, I see you only calling for good character. In this Arab context, as we mentioned, morals were closest to innate nature. Bodies were most capable of enduring hardship. Minds were free from philosophies and intellectual debates, and people were most averse to submission and humiliation before kings. These were the characteristics of the Arabs that made them the most suitable for the revelation of the message. Now, whoever considers this meaning should think if he wants to begin reform in his reality, his time, or his place, these things will guide him to whom to start. It is clear that the very nature of humiliation, the nature of humiliation is the furthest of morals from being suitable for the message of the prophets and for reform. Imam Bashir al-Ibrahimi, the great Algerian scholar, used to say that the ignorant can be taught. The angry person can dream, and all people can gradually move away from their traits, except for the humiliated one. For no matter what happens, he cannot acquire the meanings of pride. Humiliation is a tremendous matter, a disease for which there is no cure. Our Lord, blessed and exalted is He, has told us about a tremendous example in this matter, which is the example of the children of Israel. O people of goodness, the children of Israel were humiliated by Pharaoh to the point that he would issue a decree to kill their sons while they were submissive. Look at the level of humiliation they have reached. Imagine the state issuing a decision to kill your son if it turns out he is male, and you can do nothing, and you see your son taken and slaughtered in front of you and thrown to you, and they did not think of a revolution, and they did not think of objecting, and they did not think of forming a resistance. Well, these people, a prophet was sent to them from among the resolute messengers. How did they respond to him? Logic dictates that they would rally around him as they would rally around life after death. But they told him, we were harmed before you came to us and after you came to us. So, at least if you were harmed before I came and after I came, then nothing has changed for you. So why are you upset? But they said, no, we were living well and good, and where are you now? Hosni, this means, we were harmed before you came to us, and He said, "Perhaps your Lord will destroy your enemy and make you successors in the land, so that he may see how you will act." And God destroyed their enemy with a miracle they witnessed with their own eyes. God destroyed Pharaoh before their very eyes with a miracle they witnessed with their own eyes. Yet as soon as Pharaoh was gone, they passed by a people worshipping idols. They said, "O Moses, make for us a god like the gods they have." May God help our master Moses. A terrible situation. A terrible situation. The people, due to their extreme humiliation, couldn't imagine that there could be a God who wasn't powerful over them, who wasn't visible to them, who appeared through threats, presence, and strength. They couldn't imagine this. They said, "O Moses, make for us a god like the gods they have." Well, our master Moses was absent from them, so they worshipped the calf. Glory be to God. They worshipped the calf until our master Moses came to them and destroyed the calf before his eyes. Then they said to him, "O Moses, we will not believe in you until we see God openly." Well, would any of them have dared to say, "I will not abide by Pharaoh's law until I see God"? Pharaoh was right before my eyes, for example, and that's why their situation only improved when God, "Blessed and exalted is he," said, and when we raised the mountain above them as though it were a shadow, and they thought it was about to fall upon them, they were under threat. Therefore, our master Moses was strong. As soon as he was gone from them, our master Aaron weakened him, and they almost killed him. He said, "O son of my mother, do not seize me by my beard or by my head." And in another verse he said, "O son of my mother, indeed the people have weakened me and almost killed me, so do not let the enemies rejoice over me." But because of his strength, they feared our master Moses. Enter the holy land which God has assigned to you. Look, a prophet from among the resolute messengers, supported by miracles, tells them, "Enter the holy land which God has assigned to you." They said, "O Moses, indeed there are in it a people of tyrannical strength." Humiliation is a terrible thing. Humiliation, when it penetrates the soul, is a terrible thing. In it are a people of tyrannical strength, and we will not enter it as long as they are in it, and we will not enter it until they leave it. But if they leave it, then we will enter. Then 2 men from among those who feared God, upon whom God had bestowed favor, said, "Leave the gate open for them. So if you enter it, you will be victorious, and rely upon God if you are believers." They said, "O Moses, we will never enter it as long as they are within it. So go, you and your Lord, and fight. We are staying right here. Do not underestimate humiliation when it befalls a people. Look, he sent to them a perfect leader, a messenger, indeed one of the resolute messengers, and they were saved before him by a miracle. They were saved by a miracle, and they had all the reasons for revolution and resistance. Yet they did not revolt or resist. And now they have all the reasons for victory, yet they do not dare to enter the battle. Therefore, God Almighty said, "It is forbidden to them for 40 years. They will wander about in the land." Ibn Khaldun says here that this was so that a new generation would arise in the desert, a generation that did not suffer the oppression of the pharaohs in Egypt, nor the oppression of the Amalekites in the Levant. This new generation, although it did not find the reasons for revolution, meaning it did not experience the first oppression, nor was it led by a messenger like Moses. Yes, the prophet Joshua son of Nun led them, but it was through him that victory was achieved because he was not marked by humiliation. Therefore, the Arabs, with what they had of this, the people of Al-Azhar were the most suitable for this message and for bearing it. Here we can move from the pre-Islamic era in which the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, lived, to the Prophet's birth. However, there is an important question that reformers must also consider. As I mentioned, pre-Islamic societies
تسمي نفسها جاهلية.
Societies where injustice was widespread did not call themselves unjust societies. They called
كانوا يسمون أنفسهم
themselves progressive and enlightened. Therefore, we are now in our time in a state of ignorance, similar to the
شبيهة بالجاهلية التي كانت قبل.
pre-Islamic era. I will tell you about a nice article written by a friend entitled What Did We Lose by Egyptian Cinemas Distortion of the Quraysh? When you watch an old film, Abu Jahl and Abu Lahab have stern, frowning faces, thick eyebrows, and harsh voices. On the contrary, people were not like that. Therefore, when you see someone from the pre-Islamic era looking elegant, wearing shiny clothes, and speaking politely, it does and occur to you that this could be one of the leaders of the oppressors. Now, when you see someone in a gathering security, or in the European Union, or in the statements of the Secretary of State and the White House spokesperson, do you see thick eyebrows? Do you see them all shining, dazzling people, speaking eloquent language? We have truly lost because the pre-Islamic era was distorted, because this has made us unable to understand the true nature of that era. We are now in the modern age, folks. Usury that the Arabs practiced, the exorbitant usury, isn't it exorbitant usury? In our time, we have made usury law and order. What is the origin of usury? The origin of usury is that you create money that doesn't exist. The origin of usury is that you create money that doesn't exist. I mean, I give 10 reals or pounds and ask that you return 20, 12, or 15. This increase is the creation of money that doesn't exist. What does usury do? This is what makes the rich richer and the poor poorer. It has now become a fixed clause in all banks. The current global financial system is based on banks. One of the laws of banks is that they are the only entities that create money. They create money, and therefore the size of global wealth is many times millions. The number of times the actual wealth of the revolution, the real wealth that exists in reality, is determined by the bank. All banks have a law that allows them to lend money up to 90% of the actual funds they hold. So, the bank stifles money, creates money, and this money is ultimately paid for by the vulnerable populations. There isn't enough space to elaborate on this matter, but all the peoples of the earth are now paying the price for the prosperity of Western and American societies. Because all of this, I mean, what about the laws that are in place, which give some people money that increases and multiplies, while others have money that naturally decreases? Neither one works nor the other falls short. Okay, what about the killing of boys and the burying alive of girls? Isn't there killing of boys and burying alive of girls in our society now? Yes, but under another title called the right to abortion, a woman's right to own her body right. Because she owns her body, she is free to commit adultery whenever she wants and to get rid of the fetus whenever she wants. The numbers that statistics bring regarding the number of abortions and the killing of boys, these, my friends, are in the millions, tens of millions, and sometimes hundreds of millions. I don't want to mention a specific number now because I've read many figures. But you're talking about massacres of tens of millions of fetuses in their mothers' wombs. And the Democratic parties, you know, the West in general, the parties there, right and left, Republican and Democratic, the left wing, Principles in human rights is the right to abortion. So, yes, now we are in a state of ignorance where boys are killed and girls are buried alive while they are still in their mothers' wombs under the guise of women's freedom. And this ignorant man also killed boys, didn't he? Wasn't it his freedom? Wasn't he the father? Everyone is free to do what they want with their body. And on top of that, the programs that were put in place to reduce the number of people around the world, the programs that were put in place led to massacres of tens and hundreds of millions of children. I mean, sterilization programs, population reduction programs, which come out in the guise of civilized language, like the Women and Population Conference, and we should work to reduce the population, and what is it called? Birth control, family planning. Organization. We also have a remarkable civilization in packaging versus packaging meanings. So, for example, when they raise prices, they say price adjustment. Okay, but when they want to displace people from their country, they say creating safe corridors. There's a mind behind these meanings. So, organizing means preserving reproductive health. Preserving reproductive health, which means being content with 1, 2, or 3 children. There's a very, very dangerous documentary called Reducing the Number of Women in Asia. Every time it's uploaded to YouTube, it gets deleted, but search for it. It talks about the experiments conducted in China and India to reduce the population. How did they carry out sterilization operations? Sterilization, meaning making women infertile. And how did it happen? Of course, the people paid enormous sums of money for this, and it had very bad social repercussions. But the point is, don't belittle the era of ignorance, thinking that the people who lived in it were stupid or savage. No, what we are living in now is a form of ignorance. But only those who measure it on a scale of reason will notice that Islam, for usury, was rampant in pre-Islamic times, just as it is now, but even more so. The burying of daughters alive is also prevalent now, and the widespread immorality. We're talking about 4 types of marriage and the women who wear red flags. Now, every mobile phone is a river of pornography. Pornography is at the fingertips, with apps that facilitate adultery and apps that encourage the acts of the people of Lot. All of this is present, and, of course, this is one of the global industries of the pornography industry: brothels, houses of prostitution, and nightclubs. Now, even a bottle of water, if it wants to advertise itself, must be drunk by a woman. Indeed, everything now, almost every woman is an object of lust, whether in the street, on television, or in advertisements. Even the abundance of immorality exists in our time just as it did in pre-Islamic times. Injustice prevails. The strong among us devour the weak. Of course, we Muslims don't need to provide evidence of this, especially in this era we live in. The point, my friends, is that pre-Islamic society, as you read in books, is not our mythical, legendary society, nor were those who lived in it stupid, savage, and ridiculous. Rather, it is the society we live in now, which calls itself the age of science, the age of reason, the age of human rights, the age of women's rights, and the age of children's rights. All of this is merely a cover for contemporary ignorance that exists and needs to follow the Prophet. May God bless him and grant him peace in order to bring people out of darkness into light, just as their Prophet, may God bless him and grant him peace, brought them out of darkness into light. This is a very The ignorance that people were enduring the time of the Prophet. May God bless him and grant him peace. Okay, so the Prophet's birthday, peace and blessings be upon him, is approaching. The last element of ignorance is religions. Where were the religions? What has become of Judaism and Christianity? This actually opens up a very beautiful story, the story of Salman al-Farsi. Salman al-Farsi has a unique story that describes the state of ignorance and the state of Islam. It's a fascinating story because it reveals something else, that there were people who were waiting for the birth of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, at that time. Salman al-Farsi, as he himself narrated, heard this hadith from Abdullah ibn Abbas. Salman was his father's most beloved son, and his father, out of his great love for him, spoiled him and kept him at home. One day, his father was preoccupied with something and sent his son to look after the farm or the crops they were cultivating. Salman al-Farsi went out and, for the first time, noticed a church in their Persian village. Of course, Salman's father was the village headman, or the village chief, as they called him. He saw the church and was drawn to it by what he heard of the prayers of the people in it. He entered and listened to them, staying with them until nightfall. He was impressed by this religion. We said that our master Salman grew up in his father's house, in his father's lap, under his father's care. Of course, his father accustomed him to the Persian religion to the point that he was the one who would keep the fire from going out. The Magi used to worship fire, so our master Salman was in his ignorance, who used to keep the fire from going out. So, when he went, his father was worried about him. He said, "My son, where were you?" He said, "My father, I saw a church in which there was such and such." He said, "My son, there is no good in this religion, and there is no good except in the religion of your father and your ancestors." He said, "No, by God, rather this religion is better than the religion that we are on." So his father took him. Of course, here you find an example of determination and perseverance. Our master Salman the Persian sent to the Christians who were in this church and said to them, "Where is the origin of this religion?" They said, "The origin of religion is in Syria, but now it is in Persia." He said, "If merchants come from Syria, inform me." Merchants came from Syria and informed him. He said, "When your return to Syria is due, inform me." When their return to Syria was due, he devised a plan, freed himself from his chains, and fled with them to Syria. He went there to the bishop, the head of the church. Of course, look at a man who set himself aside to search for the truth. "So, who are you? What do you want?" He said, "I am a man who love this religion, so I want to stay with you, serve you, and learn from you." He said, "No problem, come in." So he served him for 7 years. He remained in the village, moving from being the son of the village chief to a servant of a people he did not know, nor did he know their language. But he only saw that their religion was better than the religion he was on. He found this bishop to be a bad man who ordered them to give zakat and charity. When they collected zakat and charity for him, he became proud of himself until he had 7 jars of gold and silver. And the time came. If you have 5 minutes left, yes, that's fine. 10 minutes won't be enough for the hadith of our master Salman. Okay, we will complete what we can from it, but pay attention. Good people, the original, natural, or prevailing thing for a weak-willed, weak-minded man is that if he finds a religious person like this, what does he do? By God, our religion and the religion of our fathers are better than them, and you know there are many people like that, waiting for something to happen so Our master Salman remained with this man in this manner until he died. When they came to bury him, he said to them, "This was an evil man who used to order you to give charity, and if you collected it for him, he would hoard it for himself." They said to him, "And how do you know this?" He said, "I will show you where the gold and silver are." So he showed them, and they retrieved them. Then they crucified him and stoned him, leaving him unburied. Then they chose another man for him. Salman said, "I don't know of a man who doesn't pray the 5 daily prayers whom I consider better than him." Meaning, our master Salman is saying that this man was the best non-Muslim man he had ever seen. He was the most ascetic of people in this world and the most focused on the hereafter. He was, for Salman, the perfect example of this religion. He stayed with him until his death. When he died, Salman said, "O man," meaning, "you know my story and what you did for me. Whom do you advise me to follow?" He replied, "My son, I don't know of anyone who is like me now. People have changed and altered, except for a man in Mosul who is like us now." Of course, pay attention. I am telling you this story because it reveals to us the state of religions at the birth of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. Religions had been afflicted by corruption and decay. Even their leaders had passed away, like our friend here who was collecting gold and silver. The rest of them were few and isolated, unable to change anything. So, when he asked him about a righteous man, he said, "I only know of a man in Mosul." So, Salman traveled from Syria to Mosul, went to his friend, and he was just like his friend. When his death approached, he asked him the same question, "What you see has befallen you, and you know what is happening to me, and to whom you entrust your affairs." He replied, "My son, I don't know anyone who is like me, except a man in Amnuriyar." Amnuriyar is now near the Turkish province of Afan. So, look at the journey from Persia to Syria, from Syria to Mosul, from Mosul to Amnuriyar being Afan, which is, of course, lower, meaning south of Atair, for those of you who know it or have the map in mind. He was with him, and was just like his 2 companions. When death approached, our master Salman asked him the same question. He replied, "I don't know anyone who remains as we were. The righteous ones have passed away, except that the time of a prophet will come to you. He will emerge from the land of the Arabs and migrate to a land between 2 larva fields, a land of palm trees. If you encounter him, then follow him. He has 3 signs. He does not eat charity. He accepts gifts, and between his shoulders is the seal of prophethood." I imagine this scene, if made into a series or film, would be extremely exciting. Now, this the righteous Christian man possessed knowledge of what, my friends? He knew the time was near, the time of a prophet was approaching. He knew the place where the prophet would emerge in the land of the Arabs. He knew the biography of the prophet and his migration to a certain land. He knew the descriptions of the land of migration, a place between 2 larva fields, abundant with palm trees. Odd. Willing, next time, we will show you some of the wonders described in the books of the Jews and Christians concerning our prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. Wonders that will make you certain of God Almighty's words, and those to whom we gave the scripture recognize him as they recognize their own children. The prophet's mission and the truth of his prophethood are beyond doubt. Therefore, when the Prophet heard this story from Salman, later, he wanted Salman to relate it to the companions, because he, peace and blessings be upon him, wanted people to know that his story was mentioned by the Jews and Christians. The time of a prophet is near. He will emerge in the land of the Arabs. His migration will be to a land with larva fields, between two larva fields, abundant with palm trees. If you encounter him, then stay close to him. At this time, our master Salman al-Farisi had amassed wealth, and, true to his strong will and unwavering determination, he also set out, that is, he caught up with a caravan of merchants who had traveled before him. The Arabs were from the tribe of Kalb, so he told them, "Take me to the land of the Arabs in exchange for these sheep." They agreed, took the sheep, bound him, and sold him as a slave. Walking the path of truth is not our path, strewn with roses. The most severely tested of people are the prophets, then those most like them, and so on. A man is tested according to his faith. If his faith is strong, his trials are increased. Look at our master Salman. He left behind the comfort and leadership he enjoyed and went as a stranger, encountering a bishop, a man of bad character and bad faith, and now he is being sold as a slave. He was sold as a slave in one of the Arab markets. Anyway, his situation settled with a man from the Banu Qari tribe in Medina. He said, "No sooner had I seen it than I recognized it." He saw the description. Of course, Medina is between two larva fields, meaning between two mountains or two mountain ranges. It is a simple place with palm trees, and he was sold as a slave. He said he was sitting on top of a palm tree when a Jew, the cousin of the Jew who had him as a slave, came to him. This man, his cousin, is describing a description. He said, "The Banu Kalar, who are the Ansar, Kalar being the name of one of their ancestors. When the Jews, they like to insult the Ansar, meaning they say, 'What are the sons of so-and-so?' It is said that they gathered in Quba over a man who they claim is a prophet." Of course, our master Salman said, "The shock, the tremor, the shaking seized me." He said, "I did not feel myself until I was under the palm tree from above. I came down from it." He said, "What did you say?" He said, "Then my master punched me with a punch that hurt me and said, 'What is your business with this? Go back to what you were doing.'" But our master Salman picked up on this news and went to the Prophet, may God bless him and grant him peace, with a few dates in Quba before he entered Medina, and said to him, "I have known that you are a righteous man and that you are a stranger, and you have companions who are strangers, and these are dates that I have prepared for charity. So you are the people most deserving of them." He said, so the Prophet took the dates and said to his companions, "Eat and hold back." Salman said, "This is one." Then, on another occasion, he brought a few dates and said, "I saw that you did not eat any of the dates, and these are dates given as a gift from the charity dates, and this is a gift, so I brought them to you." A prophet said to his companions, "Eat," and he ate with them. Then he said, "This is the second." Then in another situation, our master Salman said, "What is he looking for now?" The seal of prophethood." He said, "I was circling around it." In another instance with the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, he said, "I was circling around him, and he, peace and blessings be upon him, knew what was wrong with me. He removed his cloak from his shoulders, and there
فقلت وهذه الثالثة. خاتم النبوة يا أحباب هو يعني نتوء قليل، كأنها جلدة زائدة فيها حمراء فيها بعض شعرات كما وصفها الصحابة.
between his shoulders was the seal of prophethood, peace and blessings be upon him. He said, so I approached him, kissing and embracing him. I said, and this is the third time, the seal of prophethood, my friends. It means a small protrusion, like an extra piece of skin, reddish in color, with some markings, as the companions described it. It was between the shoulders of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. This hadith tells us about the nature of religion.
السابقة وكيف كان
knew his time
زمانه
and place. Some
ومكانه
even
بل بعضهم كان يعرف
knew the
زمانه
names of
ومكانه
his father and mother. Next time, God willing, peace, mercy, and blessings of God be upon